Good morning, welcome to Going to Ground. You find me along the Ridgeway in Wiltshire on a slightly soggy bank holiday Monday, walking Effie out along this ancient route, reflecting on the last couple of days in the nation, and slightly inappropriately addressed as ever for what is a slightly damper start than I had imagined. Look through there. Two little lambs, hence Effie's on a lead. I'm trying to make my way towards sheep of another more static sort, the grey wethers as they're called, of which I may have spoken before in these little films about place, faith and landscape. The grey wethers are a series, or several pockets actually, around the Wiltshire scene of sarsen stones that from a distance look like sheep, wethers being a country name for sheep. And there's endless interest and curiosity for Effie in these hedgerows this morning. And they flock in abundance up on Fifield Down, which has an immense appeal, partly because it's so blooming obscure and difficult to reach. It takes about an hour to get there on foot, but it does for that very reason, as the traffic noise from the Bath Road recedes and one walks deeper into ancient countryside. There is a sense of arriving somewhere quite bleak and mysterious, and the appearance of the grey wethers does indeed look very like sheep. In fact, when I first saw them, I genuinely couldn't tell the difference between the actual flocks flanking them and the stones themselves, which are the same size, same colour, pretty much. And among them are some particularly distinguished sarsen stones that still have Stone Age markings on them, where axes were ground to be sharpened. This is the sort of M4 of the Neolithic age, the Ridgeway, and so lots of human traffic and animal traffic along this deeply rutted path. And so there are still signs of that, just scattered around along the surface nearby, but it takes an age to get there, and depending on how heavy the rain gets, we may or may not reach it. I've come many times along here and turned back, but it's only about 7 in the morning, so we might give it a go. And I just wanted to reflect very briefly on a phrase that I've used before when trying to describe something at the centre of the national. Whoops, that's one of the ruts along the path. It's very easy to twist an ankle along here. At the centre of the national social imaginary, as you might call it, the myths, the narratives that have shaped who we are, particularly around the landscape. An idea, an enigmatic, curious phrase that Walter Bagehot uses in his English Constitution, the only written version. It's a description of our Constitution, actually, because of course we have an unwritten one. But he uses a phrase in association, in relation to the monarchy, which is of this local holiness. And as you might imagine, it's one that immediately arrested my interest and which I muse about quite a lot. And he describes part of the monarchy's purpose in the English tradition as being a sacralising, if that's the right word, of the landscape. We know the dangers of doing that, of idolising place. They're always close at hand and worth being well aware of. but there are also deeply intuitive, instinctive, natural and good aspects of that, and one needs to keep as I say, a healthy awareness of the pitfalls, just as with any social or political view. I enjoyed the weekend, and I was very nervous during the service, like I suspect many clergy. I wasn't there, but friends and colleagues were there in close attendance on the monarch and the Queen, and I felt for them with all of those priceless objects and regalia, so many steps and trailing robes to trip up on, so many microphones to negotiate. I mean, it's just staggering really how the ancient stones of the abbey could contain it without quaking. But they did a fantastic job, and I was pacing up and down for the most part. I enjoyed it, and I am I love that aspect of it, and I was preaching in Salisbury Cathedral yesterday for the regional local service for the coronation about it. I don't like, in fact I really don't like the more tabloid elements of royalism, and once the ceremony is done, I want now to put it to bed, as I imagine the King does too, and not go on about it. And there is an appropriate quietness, I think, after an occasion like that. But that's not really what I wanted to mention. It's more the ideas of which are evident whenever we have these sorts of national occasions, of such impossibly lofty ideals being located in everyday human scenarios where we can trip on a mic lead or we can drop the crown. Thankfully that didn't happen. And amongst frail and ordinary people, the idea of majesty dwelling amid wet bunting and cold quiche, which is a very British image, but it is precisely that meeting point that monarchy is expressing, the possibility of gilded beauty in the everyday, and that is an aspect of the mystery of a constitutional monarchy, which I think is very worthwhile, particularly if it has a moral heart to it, a spiritual heart to it, as it does, which is that we have to be turned inside out and upside down and be stripped of all finery in order to be filled again. That we have the only way really of justifying or of exercising anything approaching majesty is to, for a Christian certainly, is to first, even symbolically, to pour all that out and to recognize one's deep dependence on God. And there is still at the heart, as it was so powerfully evident, of our coronation, an utter private dependence upon God, a stripping back, which is, as I say, remarkably powerful, and in lesser ways, in different ways for each of us, before we can aspire to, and at times reach our very best. There has to be a similar self-emptying for service. The only way is, to my mind at least, that we recognise much is expected of those to whom much is given. I'm not dogmatic about it though, because of course there are different ways of viewing it, and it's just it is the particular cultural tradition that has huge pitfalls, lots of downsides, as well as some real jewels in the crown, which for me are this placing of service at the heart of our national constitution, and of the pursuit of a kind of mystical beauty in the midst of the everyday and the mundane. Well, that'll have to do, because the rain is beginning to speckle my camera. B, my right arm is getting exceedingly sore from holding up the camera. And C, I'm not sure if we're going to get to the grey weathers this morning. It's still a long way off. Good to be with you anyway, and have a happy bank holiday. God bless you as you go to ground.